Hi, and welcome to the third episode of Conversations with the Pioneer. I'm talking to Mihir Sharma, Senior Fellow and Head of Economy and Growth at the Observer Research Foundation. Thanks for joining me, Mihir. Thank you for giving your time here. Before we start on the main issue, one thing is finding very amusing today is almost everybody's become an expert on the economy. As an actual expert on the economy, how do you look at social media experts on the economy?
Well, I think that you expect that social media will move on very swiftly to the next subject that interests it. To be fair, I think that a large number of people in social media continue to be greater experts on murder investigations in Mumbai than on the economy. So, without that, God knows what my job security would be.
No, that today they become experts on drugs, I believe. Everybody's, but
Yes.
people are being arrested for consuming pot. Anyway, that way, half the people we knew in our college would be in jail.
Would have been, yes.
But Mihir, I want to ask, as a, looking at the economy, one thing at the start of the coronavirus pandemic, I was told by many people, was that Chinese capital would help the world get out of this crisis. Now, China's actions over the last few months have kind of made that impossible. But I want to understand, can you actually put huge barriers to capital in today's day and age, given the way capital structures are across the world?
So there are two important points there, Kushan. The first is the impression that some people had early on in this crisis, that it would be, the recovery would be like the recovery from the 2008-2009 crisis, be helped along by China being not just an engine of growth, but being an engine of spending. That has not materialized. And it's not materialized because China, unlike in 2008-2009, isn't in the same kind of comfortable fiscal situation. It doesn't have all that money to blow. It has been for some time now trying to transform its own economy away from being the kind of economy that is dependent upon state-led investment to a more normal private sector entrepreneur-led economy. That transformation has not yet worked, but essentially if they were now to open the floodgates the way that they did in the years after 2008, it may be great for a lot of entrepreneurs across the world, including in India, just as those years were great for some bad entrepreneurs in India as well, as you know as well as I do. But it wouldn't be necessarily that great for either our economies as a whole or for the Chinese economy itself. So that's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. And they are not spending the kind of proportion of their GDP on stimulus that many other countries have. I think we have to be absolutely clear about that. The second point is that, can you imagine, even if China were to start exporting capital at that scale, can we keep them out? No, we can't. We can put up some restrictions, right? We can make it tougher. We can make it more difficult for Chinese especially for money related to the state to come into India. We can't keep it out completely. But that's an ongoing process, like any other form of financial regulation, Kushan. All right, it'll be sometime the regulator will be one step behind what finance actually does. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try, that you needn't try, that you couldn't try. It also doesn't mean that you don't do stupid things, right? So shutting off all investment from Hong Kong is a stupid thing, because a lot of the pools of money in Hong Kong are not linked to the Chinese state. Also, a lot of the pools of money in Hong Kong that's where a lot of like Asia ex-China funds actually set up, right? So a lot of money goes into Hong Kong to be invested into Southeast Asia, into India, and so on and so forth. And that's one of, we should be very careful about doing that.
But there's also Singapore in that question. A lot of funds set up in Singapore, and you cannot, if you want to stop funds from Singapore coming in, it's going to be very dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Want to get to the aspect around this app ban we've done, and it's very fascinating. I find, obviously this has rubbed some people in China the wrong way. But do you see future trade wars and future economic fights being over applications and access to the internet? you already have Europe and America always fighting about, access the American giants have in Europe. Do you see policy on the economic front and trade front going around that front? Because we've never thought of the internet in that sense. We've always thought of the internet as a borderless Wild West. But as you start setting up borders on the internet, how will things change?
Look, there's an important point to be made here, which is that we don't know yet how to make money on the internet. Companies are struggling to figure out, should I be expanding my footprint? What are the other ways? So right now, what governments are trying to do is to try and ensure that no one country monopolizes the way in which you do it, right? And so when we talk about, for example, the app ban that India has put in, part of it is, of course, national security, but there's also a certain degree of these guys should not be building up a user base here in case the user base turns into profit making down the line. Now, the fact is that the user base is, in many cases, has not yet created profits for these people, right? So therefore, what you see from countries like India is we have all this data, we have all these users. We are concerned that you have to go down, you have to protect essentially how our future digital entrepreneurs. How are you going to do that? Because we don't know how our future digital entrepreneurs are actually going to make money. So what you correctly are pointing out to as a kind of lashing out in various directions by not just India, but also by Europe, by a couple of other places which don't see themselves as being part of this pie of digital money, is a response to a lack of understanding of how you actually make money online at all.
But, like in Australia, you're now trying to force Google to pay newspapers, and being a part of the newspaper industry, I know that how digital has affected us, even though I know most news websites don't make money. And but we've also come to a very interesting stage about data nationalism. Countries want to hold on to the data. They said data is the next oil.
Absolutely.
Famously, even the Economist cover, which was quoted by Mr. Mukesh Ambani as well. But can you,
I'm not sure really... that was, didn't the Economist quote Mr. Mukesh Ambani?
As well, but I think the Economist started with the cover was first, and then Mr. Mukesh Ambani quoted in the Economist. It sort of circular quotations as the world goes. But can you really be nationalistic about data, because it's a double-edged sword, right?
I have to say that while I understand the desire to do this, to try, I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea precisely because we don't know, as I said, how money can be made on the internet. Tomorrow, if it is the case that we discover that it is small companies financed by China, which because of free-flowing data make money off Africa, that are India's big ticket to the next decade of growth, aren't we shutting that off by doing something like this? This, like a lot of other ways in which you want to try and shape the future to your advantage through economic policy, is poorly thought through precisely because you don't know how the economy turns out. And all we know about the economy and have known about the economy in the past is, by and large, if you allow capital and ideas and goods and services to flow across boundaries, it helps those countries that are a little further behind the frontier more than it helps everybody else. And I think we can agree that India is fairly far behind the frontier in these respects. It needs to catch up. And the best way that it can catch up is precisely through having access to data from across the world, having access to ideas from across the world, and to VCs from across the world. Because VCs and finance, more generally, don't just bring into any country that they bring, don't just bring money. They bring technical capability, they bring know-how, and they bring the capacity that many of our startups may not have to begin with.
Okay, Mihir, I want to get to the economy. Where do we see India headed? Do you see growth coming back in 2021? When I speak to some consumer-oriented companies, particularly in the automotive sector, they're saying not only is 2020 a dead loss, they're saying 2021 is not a dead loss, but we'll only see growth get back to 2018 or 2019 levels in 21 before growth really restarts in 22 or 23. Would you agree with that contention?
I think that you're going to see a spike of one kind. We've had a very negative spike in the first quarter of full lockdown, right? 23.9%, a negative spike year on year in our GDP. There is going to be a recovery from that, Kushan. I think we have to accept that there will be some kind of recovery from that. And so you may see a nominal amount of growth in the economy going forward. But it is going to be, again, to quote another economist cover, at best, the ceiling is going to be a 90% economy for some time. It will be at 90% of what we were below before the pandemic, which itself, in terms of potential, was 90% of what we were before demonetization, which itself was 90% of what we were prior to 2012. So, we've had a step downwards in our potential growth over and over again, from the end of the boom to demonetization to GST, and now to the pandemic. And so even if we see a return to growth, what we will not see and are not likely to see as of right now is an attempt to permanently push our potential level of growth back to what it was 7 or 8 years ago. And I think that is what has to be the priority for the government going forward, which is to recover that sort of high potential growth. And that may well take 3 years, Kushan.
So just like people who suffered from the virus and are seeing some permanent or long-lasting damage, there will be, even if we found a vaccine tomorrow, even if we all got vaccinated, hypothetically, there will be some long-lasting impact to this, even if everything turned out perfectly tomorrow.
If you look at just the economy, and let's leave aside the long-lasting impact to a generation of kids for not having, to being out of school, so missing out on immunization, those are things we should be worried about as a country. But let's leave that aside and just look at the economy. The fact is that and this is one of the great lessons, I think, of demonetization and of the GST, that we don't really know how the Indian informal economy works. We don't know when it is shutting down. We don't know when it's losing jobs. We don't know when it's gaining jobs, right? The problem with our data collection and our understanding of mainstream policy making in Delhi is that it is, for obvious reasons, targeted towards the larger and more comprehensive formal side of the economy. But the informal economy, which is actually larger in real terms, we don't get. And therefore, we don't know what the impact of the lockdown, the pandemic, the destruction of demand, and now it's not just a lockdown issue. There is a behavioral change. People aren't spending. People aren't investing, right? Tomorrow, if you shut down all lockdown restrictions, it still won't be at 100%, right? And we know this because people have changed their behavior for good reason. And we don't know what that effect is going to be on small and medium enterprises, on micro enterprises. We don't know the things that have shut down, the things that will shut down, the things that, the loans that will go delinquent going forward and aren't because of the moratorium. We have no clear idea of that yet. So I think I like your analogy, which is that damage has been done. We may apparently recover because the lockdown is over and growth may return, but there is long-lasting damage to our tissues in the economy, precisely because some of them will have been infected by this period.
And we don't know the impact in small town India. We don't know the impact when we go to the heartland of UP or Bihar, how people are...
The heartland of UP is doing fine, Kushan, according to the Commerce Ministry. It is the number 3 place in which to do business in the country. So please, number 2, sorry.
Number 2. So let's not. Andhra is number 1 and UP is number 2. Delhi is, of course, not in the top 10. Bengal is in the top 10. Anyway, we all get surprised. But this year, of course, the informal economy, part of the informal economy was the Durga Puja economy, which we are not going to see this year, sadly. And
Well, we have to understand that I don't know, for example, what the impact has been on a lot of Mumbai's smaller economy of the fact that Ganesh Chaturthi was not a big deal this year.
yes,
Right, and the fact that it could not, we don't know the number of people, for the average person who runs a particular stall, was that 1/10 of his income, of his annual income, what he makes in those 6 or 7 days. I think I know, and you probably know people in Calcutta from whom it is 1/10
yeah,
of their income, what they make around puja, that it is like the puja bonus
yeah,
is an actual thing. And yes, but on the other hand, maybe you can't shut it down. We've also all been to puja pandals where you're like literally breathing, 14 other people's nostrils. So, what is it? This has been something that has been handed to us as a public health crisis, which is also an economic crisis. And the fact is, there are no good answers. The one good answer, I think, Kushan, and I think I have to credit the government for this, is that it hasn't panicked too early on the economy. All right, and a lot of people, in the paper that I still write for, and have an association with the Business Standard, a lot of people will be quoted on the front page saying, "Time for a stimulus." All right, Mint, on the day that we got the print of the GDP, put that, and on equivalent side, on the left hand side of the front page, on the right hand side, "Time for the second stimulus," opinion piece, right? That's a bad idea, Kushan. And it's a bad idea because we don't know what the damage has been. And we don't know, we have a limited amount of money and we don't know where to put it yet. We also have to structure it in the right way, make sure it reaches the right destinations. And that we can't do right now.
yeah, we can.
So
We can.
the finance ministry has said that, guys, wait, let's peak. Let's make sure that people are in the right frame of mind to start investing. Then let's start putting money out. Okay, and other countries may be able to send $600 to everybody. If we were like the US, then we'd be much richer.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Mihir. Thanks for joining us. We don't make these too long. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now. Thanks again.